For development, a proposal on Poplin Road for townhomes from Tri-Point Homes. And I'll turn it over to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you, Brandy, and good evening, council. So glad to be here, and I apologize for our mix-up last time that we didn't show for our time, but we're glad to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you this proposed project. And let's start off with some history on Tri-Point, new to the market. We are headquartered in Irvine, California, and we just started up in the Carolinas with Charlotte and Raleigh markets. We are aggressively looking for new communities to create in all the markets in Charlotte. We are one of the top 10 builders. We're number 9 as far as revenue goes in the country, so we're the best of big and small. It's one of our brand pillars. Best of big because we have a lot of revenue being a publicly traded company. Small because we operate our business locally. We're not trying to start the Carolinas by acquiring a company or trying to grab some product or homes from California and trying to make them fit into the Carolinas. We are designing our homes specifically for our communities that we're looking at going into. We've got some recognition, some awards that we've gotten. You can see on your board there from 2014 and 2015. We develop communities and build our homes and create a consumer product that is welcomed by the consumers. I mentioned they're ranked number 9, and then we design our homes here locally in Charlotte. We have an architect out of Raleigh that comes in. We bring in our National Vice President of Architecture from California, and every single home is designed for each community, specifically to it. What that means is we have flexibility in our homes. We're not trying to shoehorn something that doesn't fit in a community or a neighboring plan or master plan, right? We have some smart home technology. You see there on the bottom that is a well-rounded program that we use for environment and to be received with the consumers, having both technology, low energy usage, and being conscious with the environment as far as the community design, making sure we have good designs and open spaces that are usable. And I believe with that, Mr. Levesque from ESP will walk us through some of the site plan items.
Thank you. Good evening. As Cisco mentioned, I'm Matt Levesque with ESP Associates, and we're helping Tri-Point out with the planning and the engineering, and really helping to create the sense of community for the project. So the site itself is located right off of Poplin Road. It is adjacent to the town limits, so that is something we're looking for annexation and a rezone as this project. Now, as you'll see, I'll walk through quickly the future land use plan and the area plan. And a little bit unique is tonight we're going to show you 2 options, trying to stay consistent with those area plans, which do call for a mixture of uses and some higher densities. So we are going to show an option that does look at an attached townhome, and then an option that does look at a detached, alley-loaded single-family home, just to try to get your feedback and your thoughts and just see what may be the best fit. As mentioned, the site itself, it's currently in the county, zone RA40. It is adjacent to Indian Trail, so there will be a annexation and a rezoning. This is just a highlight of the current zoning itself. So you can see it is adjacent to SF5. And then the rest of the area is RA40 in the county. One of the approaches with the project is the future land use plan does call this area out as one of the nodes for some higher density. And if you zoom in on that node, you can see this pod itself on the corner of Rocky River and Poplin Road is called out for a mixture of uses. It's right adjacent to Fieldstone Farms, and so that is the approach we're taking, is how do we achieve that. So the first option you see in front of you is the townhome option. So there's a alley-loaded townhome is what's being proposed. As you can see, we did front the units on Poplin Road. We do have a meandering sidewalk and a nice linear green. So looking at how do you create a front door, how do you create a nice facade for the community itself. Also locating the amenity up towards the front of the neighborhood so it does provide easy access for the neighbors, as well as another nice feature as you enter the community. The site itself is mostly cleared and is a field, very limited trees. We do have one pocket as you get to the west down towards the creek where we do have some existing tree canopy. So that is where we are proposing our tree save. Everything else does not contain any trees. So it's a rather unique site from that perspective. The street network, working with how do you, when you come into the community, how do you see front doors? How do you create a nice streetscape with the architecture? So that was the focus of the layout itself. And also strategically planting and planning for pockets of open spaces and buffers and greens. And so we'll walk you through a few of those. But the site itself, this is the townhome options proposing up to a potential of 151 units. It's right around a 5.8 density. And then meeting and exceeding the minimum requirements of the 16% open space and 15% tree save. And then the townhomes themselves are 22 feet wide, and they're 60 feet in depth. And they are alley loaded, so the garages would be in the back of the home. So what you're seeing here is a proposed elevation. And like Cisco mentioned, it is conceptual. This is just the first option that they're exploring. I wanted to get your feedback on tonight. That'll give you a general sense of the visual, the lines of sight, and some of the architectural elements within it. The second option of a plan, while we're still trying to meet the intent of the future land use plan, which is calling out for that higher density, we wanted to look at the detached option. So this is also alley loaded, so you do not have driveways in the front, which it does help create that streetscape. We are fronting units on Poplin Road, but with an alley in the back, so that is where the cars will park and have access. But a similar approach as the last plan with the amenity up front, and then pockets of greens, trails, and other amenities for the community. The site itself is slightly less dense. It is 131 units and right at 5 units per acre. And then also very similar on the open space and the tree save at around 15%. These lots it's a 24-foot wide product, but the lot itself is 34 feet wide. And that does include a 20-foot rear setback, so there is enough parking in the back from the alley to the face of the garage to make sure you can fit a car. So you have the car in the garage as well as the car in the driveway. And then we have 5-foot side yards that are being proposed, so it's 10-foot building separation.
5-foot what? I'm sorry.
Side yards,
Side yard.
yes. And then across the lot itself, you're looking at a 34-foot wide lot. But that is an alley-loaded lot, so when you're looking down the streetscape, you're not seeing cars parked in driveways and garage doors. It is a nice front door. And then here's an example of what is currently being proposed in the concept stage of some of the single-family detached homes.
Now, is that all of them, or is that just some of them?
That's just a few of the options. Just
So
wanted.
Or is that an option for, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Oh, that's no problem.
every home gonna be like this? Is it in the 131, is that what you're saying? In the 131 units, each one of them are gonna be like this, or?
No,
The-
we'll have more elevations
Yeah.
than this. This is just a representation.
No, I guess what I'm thinking on the first elevation that you showed, they're all attached.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Are all these gonna be detached?
yes, the second option.
Yes.
Second option, they're all detached.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I guess that was the question I was trying to get out.
Yeah, sorry, and I know that it's a little different, but we wanted to, our hope was with the workshop tonight to be able to get your feedback on, we prefer the townhomes or prefer a detached option, and then kind of start, working with you from there. Internal to the site, for both options, we're just showing some of the typical amenities and the typical aspects of the community that would be included. Very heavily utilization of trail network, pedestrian trails that access across the front of the site at Poplin, as well as through the site itself, through sidewalk network and street trees. And then looking at a pool area with parking, and that's integrated into the neighborhood itself. As you see the homes, because they are alley loaded, it does allow us to do some unique features with it, with a sidewalk in front of the units, so they're kind of fronting towards the pool. So it creates that nice view. Also, another option, especially with the communities and trying to target different buyers and some options to help make the neighborhood more attractive. And there's an area towards the back of the site that we're looking at for a potential dog park. And so as you can see, it's a use where you can fence in areas, large dogs, small dogs, also have some tree canopy, some tree cover, and some buffers and landscaping. So just a unique feature that is in pretty high demand in some of the newer neighborhoods, so something that's being explored for this area as well.
Question, I'm sorry to interrupt you
Yes, sir.
again.
Mhm.
You call that another option, okay?
Mhm.
Is this an option for 1 and 2? Is this an option for 2, or is this just an option for?
No, sir, it's being proposed on both plans.
On both of them, so this would be, this is gonna go in either one of them, right?
Yes, sir. Mhm.
Okay, so it's really
Yeah,
not
the-
an option then, it's, when I think of an option as maybe you're gonna put it in.
Correct,
or not.
I probably shouldn't have said
No,
option.
I was just curious, because
Yeah.
I was confused, okay.
No, that's a great
So
question.
it's definitely going in both.
Yes, what you're seeing on some of the common open space areas, those areas are the same on both plans, whether you go with the townhome or the single family.
Right, that was the
Um,
confusing part, because
yep.
you said it was an option, so I didn't know which one it was. one or
Understood. No, that's a
both,
good
or-
question.
There you go, got it, understand.
So yeah, it's being proposed the same on both. And then the linear park aspect of it, which I mentioned, which would be incorporated in all aspects of the community itself, is connecting some of the streets and some of the alleys, accessing across some of the front of the units, tie into the dog parks, as well as tie into some of the sidewalks along Poplin. But just really trying to activate some of the open space areas without it just being grassed or just being a field area, just trying to actually integrate some of those and let the neighbors use them. So overall, that was the general summary of what we're proposing. I know it is unique because we're showing the townhome option and the detached, but we just really wanted to get your feedback in order to kind of meet some of the aspects of the area plan. It does require some of that higher density, so I was looking at some versions of how do we achieve that and what may fit the best. So open to any questions you may
I
have.
have several, and then I'll pass it on.
Mhm.
I kind of feel like I gotta get all my questions in tonight, so I don't have a chance to get them another time. So, here are my questions.
Yes.
There's obviously gonna be a price differential because one's 131 and 151. So what's the difference in the pricing?
Yeah, the detached option is probably going to be more of a $30,000 to $40,000 increase in cost, right? For the consumer to purchase a detached versus
So
an
do you know
attached.
what those are gonna run? Are those gonna run 250 or 300?
Yeah, so on the attached, it's around a 250 to 275, somewhere like
On the
that.
attached is
On the
250 to
attached,
275.
Yeah, so detached would be more like the 275 to 3.25.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind which one I like better, and I would assume that most people, I like that detached. Well, I'm not gonna be here to vote on, but if I were to had to vote on one or the other, it would be, I like those, those are nice. But yeah, if you would go back to that one,
The elevation.
there you go.
I thought you were doing it.
And how big are these gonna be?
So those will be around 2,000, 2,300 square feet, two-story, obviously.
And how big are
And
the-
two-car garage
How
in the
big were the
rear.
other ones gonna be? I know one was 24 wide and the other one was 22 wide.
22, so yeah, the 22s would be anywhere from 1,750 to around 1,900 square feet, so a lot smaller.
To me, I'm just, and we're giving feedback.
That's what we
This-
need.
This feedback
Yes.
right here
Yep.
really is just for somebody that ain't gonna be here to feed back to you, but that,
We
I
appreciate
like
it.
that, I like this one much better than I do the other one. I know it's gonna cost more, but I like it better. And, more questions? Mark, go ahead, Mark.
The requirements that you were presenting, were those requirements, I think you, if I, sorry, I'm trying to get to the page here, but are those requirements for I think you had this slide here?
Yes.
Are those requirements county requirements? Yeah, this is the slide. Are those requirements county requirements or town of Indian Trail requirements there? When we look at the proposed,
No, we're-
required and so forth for tree safe, for open space.
No, what we're proposing is the town requirements, because it
Indian
would be a
Trail town.
rezoning and an annexation.
All right, so
Yes.
this is pertaining to, okay,
Yes,
good.
sir.
And if I can ask a question, what drew you to bring this to the town? I'm happy that you're here. This is not a question that we're not. But what drew you to the town versus going to the county?
Well, I mean, it's part of your future land use area, and we'd rather work with the town versus go to the county
Okay,
and circumvent a process that's been in place.
all right. I'll turn it back.
Shirley, you had a question?
You asked most of them here. But there's just 10 feet between the houses.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this is probably more for Patrick. This is, does this fit the UDO, the existing UDO? This does not reflect the new UDO. In the UDO, we will have the minimum size as a 1/3 of an acre.
And it's all, sorry about that. It is, the UDO that will be that applicable to this application will depend on which UDO is in place when this application is filed with the town, if one is filed.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
I have another question for you.
Yes, sir.
The alley parking on the, and you said they both were alley parking, did you not?
Correct.
On the alley parking, there's going to be a garage in the back. Is it a one-car or a two-car garage?
Two-car.
Two-car garage. Will there be enough room to park behind the two-car garage to get a car between there and the alley?
Yeah, we're planning for at least a 20-foot driveway.
Okay, so you got a 20-foot driveway. Is there going to be any anywhere to park in front of the units, or is it all going to be behind the units?
No, there's option for on-street, not option. There is proposed on-street parking within the public
There's another
roads in
option
front.
for parking
Correct.
there. I like that.
Yeah, I'll just stop using that word. Yeah, there is proposed on-street parking through the public streets that are in the community.
But is it in front of the units or just like within the community?
Just like parallel parking on the road in
So the
front of
road
the
would have to
units.
be at least 24 feet wide, right, Kevin? Captain?
Yes.
That's right.
Yep.
So you plan on making them wide enough?
Yes, sir.
And you'd make it up, hopefully, just one side of the road. You would have to just do it one side of the road, right? Or could you park on both? You couldn't really park, preferably you would put it just on one side of the road, not both. But, anyway, that's.
We can look at either options. The street section that are proposing does look at utilizing it on both sides. So if you do have homes fronting both sides of the road, there is parallel parking in front of those units.
I lived in a little detached neighborhood in Ballantyne, and actually the houses, the townhomes were connected by the storage rooms in the back. They actually didn't have, you might have seen that
Yeah.
before, where the walls didn't touch, but they did. And we didn't have on-street parking, but we did have little areas to park, like 6, 7 cars could park over here, might be in between, different buildings and that type thing too, opposed to, but that's just this is what I remember. Well, if there's, another question? I'm sorry.
Can I add to your comment in regard to the alleyway width? Our on-street parking, if we want to prevent on-street parking, probably the alleyway, our preference would be 22 feet because If you take 8 out of the 22 feet, that will put you in non-compliance, which is you have to maintain 16 feet for an emergency vehicle. So in order not to deal with on-street parking, if they're violating, especially if they like stagger in, the best way to do that is the 22 feet. Can I throw some more comments there? Are you done, Mr. Cohn?
Sure, go ahead,
Okay.
keep going.
Keep going. Just these are comments. I will look and see if Popland is planned to be widened, because that might impact. Todd, if I'm not mistaken, also I would look into discharging into the floodplain. This is where Stone Field Farm aren't they having some issues there with draining their ponds into that area?
Yeah, it's just so flat in there, I mean, they're gonna have to deal with possibly a lake cycle of the in there.
So I will look into that. So that would be the floodplain. Also a comment in regard to the soil. Soil in Indian Trail sometimes could be challenging. I would definitely look into that, so that probably will lead to some borings before you guys. I'm not telling you what to do, I'm just putting some
No, we appreciate it, yeah.
recommendations in there. And elevations, definitely we will support, can you flip to the elevations, Adam? This one right there. Are you showing here, are these standing seam metal panels? Is that what I'm looking at, some of them?
On the front there, that's a hardy panel that gives that farmhouse look. Is that what you're referring to? the
I'm
front?
referring to the vertical
lines?
one, not the horizontal one.
Yeah, so those are hardy flat panels with trim pieces that give that look of.
Okay, what about, I'm looking like as a circular one, probably curved one in front of that second one right there. Is that
Yeah,
metal?
so that is metal roof on that
Metal
porch.
roof,
Yeah.
okay. We do look for features like that, but they don't exist sometimes, kind of give some, we won't end up with that flat elevations.
Right, yeah.
So definitely, our planning staff will encourage using some of those.
Okay.
If there is any possibility to put an area for recycling, we're beginning to ask for that, especially because we do have recycling issues these days. It's not necessarily like a dumpster or something, but a clean area where people could take their recycling to
Okay.
make it easy on the county and the solid waste people to come and pick them as they're separated. The dog park, definitely, we do encourage the HOA or the property owner to, every once in a while, replace that soil or mitigate for the contamination, because it's so close to the floodplain. That's all what I have, Mr. Cohn.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for coming, and I appreciate you showing us what you've got. And we've got about 7 minutes before the meeting starts, so
Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Look
thank you
forward
for
to
your
working
time.
together.
Oh, one second. One second. Do we let them know that this is the feedback that we've given? We'll put it together and we'll
That's right.
get it back to them, in terms of, we'll collect all that data and then we'll give you the feedback, so you kind of get all these things taken together and to sort of know, what we're suggesting.
Great, thank you so much.
That's good, we appreciate it.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Patrick. Yes,
I
sir.
I have a couple of questions for you, and maybe this is for Brandy as well. What is the definition of mixed use?
Mixed use? I have my own, but I'll go ahead and turn it to Brandon. I do.
Councilmember Morris, mixed use in the true sense from a planner would be that you have all facets. You've got retail, office, you've got some single family, and then you've got the multifamily as well. Now, in reality, what mixed use turns into in the most communities is that you've got some residential and commercial.
How much then, other than housing, how many other components of mixed use are there out in this area? You guys would probably know more than I.
no, there's no business that I know of in the area.
There is actually, but it's kind of
Well-
in Monroe.
Huh?
It's in Monroe, though.
Well, he's
Down the
talking
street.
about- I'm not talking about Monroe, he's talking about.
Well, you
this
say the-
area is, But to make a long story short, there's proposed mixed use for that area, a lot of proposed mixed
There is a
use.
gas station not too far
Yeah.
from there.
So just to try and answer that question, the, this parcel right here is proposed in our comprehensive plan to be commercial, and it's also been set out. Now, this developer didn't purchase that, but that piece would technically be the commercial piece for this village area.
Part of my concern is, it feels like that mixed use has turned into a mixture of residential housing from SF1 to SF5 mixed together. And I thought that mixed use did have those components of office and retail and commercial and other things. And so I was getting a little concerned that this area was becoming heavily just residential without that true mixed use feeling.
I understand.
And then somebody mentioned the floodplain here with the Fieldstone Farms, where we're having to deal with that. They're dealing with that right now. And then something that came up, it gives me a moment to pause because of that. This floodplain was mapped out in 2008. Do you know of any updates to the floodplains that they're working on in this area by chance?
Hey, can I interject here for a minute? We got 2 minutes before the meeting starts. Can we maybe ask these questions either after the meeting? Because pretty soon we're going to start our meeting and we're going to run right into this meeting. So, and I'd like to take at least, because we ought to start at 6:30, right? We're going to start at 6:30. If you don't mind, Jerry, ask Brandy these questions
Absolutely.
after or later on in the meeting. Because we got a minute to go. And if you need to take a
It'd
break,
be preferable
take a
to
break.
email.
Huh?
Email those questions.
Yeah,
and-
or email them. I apologize, but we run out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. All right.
And you got 1 minute now. If you got to go to the bathroom or something. you
No,
better
it's
go. You
6:20,
better
it's
hurry.
6:27. You got 3 minutes. Have fun.
I got to go to the bathroom. so.
Be ready, Abby. What is today, the 18th?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Indian Trail Town Council for Monday, November 18th, 2019. If everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Barber, would you lead us, please? And the pledge. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. If you, at this time, would please silence all cell phones. If you need to take a phone call, please take it outside. And also for the record, Councilman Head couldn't make it to the meeting. Our prayers go out to him and his family for quick recovery of his mom. At this time, is there any additions or deletions to the current agenda? If there is not, I need a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
Mr. McIntyre's made the motion. All in favor? That would be unanimous. No presentation,
None.
no presentations. Sorry. We're slacking.
No public comments either.
I will open and close the public comments as there's no one that's signed up tonight. Does council have any rebuttal to the public comments? Sorry, couldn't resist. All right, that brings that to the law enforcement. You have no law enforcement update? Not even a hello, how are you? It's good to see you
Man,
too.
we breezing through this, man.
There's no consent agenda. That brings us back to the public hearing. Ms. McIntyre, would you read that for me, please? I can bring my eyes.
Yeah, item 8A, 1A, Oak Springs Single Family Development, 10 minutes, Ms. Dees.
Okay. There she is. Thank you.
Sorry, we keep clicking at the same time. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Our only public hearing for tonight is to continue the public hearing from October the 22nd for the proposed Oak Springs subdivision. I'll be as brief as I can, as this was previously considered on the 22nd. As a reminder, this request does include 3 agenda items for your consideration: a comprehensive plan amendment, annexation, and conditional zoning. This request is being proposed by JBH Development LLC and has been amended to request construction of 150 detached single-family homes, down from the previous request of 174. The applicant has also agreed to construct 2 berms and retain the tree save area fronting on Oak Springs Road as a buffer. This was a concern raised by residents previously and is noted on their landscape plan C1-1. On September the 17th, Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend approval of this request. The map before us shows the location of the property, which is just north of the Monroe Expressway and west of Oak Springs Road. Here's some existing photos of the site. And this existing zoning map shows you, currently it's SF1, and is surrounded by Union County property and then Stallings as well. The future land use currently calls it out as low-density residential. And here is the conditional rezoning plan. Shows an overall density of 2.39 units per acre. The units per acre as it relates to zoning is 4.78. with approximately 9,000 square foot lots. This still falls within the SF5 zoning district per the UDO, with a minimum of at least 8,000 square feet per lot. Previously, it was 2.78 overall and 5.52 units per acre as it relates to the zoning. In summary, the comprehensive plan's future land use map requires an amendment for this request due to the increased density. This is consistent with the comprehensive plan by meeting goal number 3, land use and housing, which calls for the creation of a diverse range of housing options. This is a reasonable request, and staff's reason for this comment previously and tonight as well is that there are existing single-family lots in the adjacent jurisdiction that are approximately 6,000 square feet. Although it's not consistent with the future land use and some of the surrounding zoning and Indian Trail, it's consistent with other surrounding areas that contain higher density projects. Staff finds this application is complete and has met the requirements, but would like for you to consider the conditions listed in your agenda packet this evening. And at the appropriate time, Town Council will need to vote on the 3 agenda items separately, and the comprehensive plan amendment and the conditional zoning does require the 2-step process, as you are familiar with. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Can you go back to the previous slide, please?
Yes, sir.
And can I ask, Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question, open up with a question?
Yes, open up. That's fine.
You said the staff suggests the conditions listed in the agenda packet. What are these conditions? I'm trying to find them here.
Just one second.
Sorry.
So it's going to be in the proposed ordinance within your packet. And it's going to be, of course, approval contingent with the annexation and the comprehensive plan amendment, that confirming that Union County Public Works, Environmental Health, Sheriff's Office, and Fire Marshal have made comments in their address during the site plan review process, that it'll comply with all the other requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance. And town approval incorporates and shall comply with any and all submittals in the case file and correspondence presented to the town council in support of this application, including but not limited to the following: the site sketch plan, architectural elevations or architectural representations, and any other information related to this case or improvements recommended by the town or the other agencies. This statement number 4 includes all the requirements of the TIA improvements. And then number 5 is the generic post office, that they must do cluster mailboxes as requested. Number 6, that the architectural should remain the same as submitted in the concept plan. Amenities shall include playgrounds, dog parks, and other recreational areas. Traffic calming measures are required in locations to be approved by the town engineering department, and I do know that Mr. Huntsinger and the developer have had that conversation. Parking areas at the amenities to be provided, and then signage shall be erected at the entrances where no on-street parking is permitted, per town ordinance chapter 71 parking regulations.
Any other questions?
Barry, did I hear you said they've also agreed to a tree save change and the construction of 2 berms?
Yes, and that's all noted on the concept plan.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Council, any other questions? Was council's questions answered with the previous meetings, that why this was delayed? Okay.
Patrick.
Mr. Morse?
This is, we're in the process of getting ready to reevaluate the UDO, and there's some significant changes to that. And this project here, and again, the future land use is calling for it to be single-family 1, and this is to council. And, we go down to Union County and we fuss at them about increasing the density and changing the plan as we go, and how in the world can they ever figure out where to put water, sewer, and all those things when we keep changing the future land use plan? I never really had a problem with increasing the density there some, but to go from SF1 to SF5, it's always this big, giant leap. And it has so many impacts with the traffic. I suppose you can't, some say you can't say anything about the schools or not, but it does impact them. And the flooding concern in that area is just, it's a big concern. I reached out to Mr. Hopper, as others have, and asked if he could lower the density, and he has. But are we comfortable doing this for future generations? So I just hope that we really do consider the flooding and the stormwater and the traffic. But back to the first question, what's staff's opinion on this project? And can I ask that?
The staff is not, you all, this is a policy decision that the town board's going to have to make. The staff has provided, they can provide you any information that will help you with that, but it really is not appropriate for them to give their opinion on what is actually a policy decision for this town board. So if you have questions about anything in particular that they can answer or the developer can answer, that's an appropriate question for y'all to ask.
Well, I do want to bring out that, there are some delays with some of our roads here. And Stevens Mill is one of those that's going to tie into it. I do like to be, for us as this council, to be a good steward and be a good neighbor to other municipalities and to our own residents that are in that area. I just think that we should really take a deep breath on this. I don't think there's any urgency for us to approve this, and maybe look at how it would fit in a new UDO if that is approved and is changed. Y'all's thoughts?
I'd actually like, Mr. Hopper, do you mind? So everybody can hear you. Just a couple quick questions.
Hello, council members. Mayor
Good
Bart
evening.
Hopper again.
Thanks for being patient.
My pleasure.
And, the biggest concern that I've received is flooding to adjacent property and excess rainfall. and to be good stewards to the neighbors, you have taken that into consideration. You are not going to add, you can't prevent what already happens, but you're not going to make it any worse. You've went through all the processes of making sure, and that's all in presentation you're given to the town staff.
Yes, sir. And it'll, continue to be monitored by your own team, in terms of engineering, drawing, and approval, and everything else.
Okay, the other question was the concern I brought up with the schools. And, Ms. Paxton, what schools were they zoned for at this current time? That's Stallings Elementary, Porter Ridge, and, was that correct? Yes. Okay.
And there was
And
capacity for all,
I
in
had
all.
spoken to the Board of Education on that, and none of those schools has a capacity problem. And what was the price range of this?
Well, with our drop from 174 to 150, which we've all been discussing internally, my guess is, it's goes up by another 10 or 15% with what it might have been before,
So
which
you're
was
talking move-up homes, not.
probably,
first-time.
yeah, you're talking move-up homes. I'm 290 to 380. It's just a guess, but the lots are bigger now, so the houses will probably be bigger.
If approved, when do you plan on breaking ground?
Once we get the engineering approved and working with, your staff here, which usually takes, I hope 4 to 6 months, but anyway,
And all questions and concerns by the DOT have been addressed?
yes, sir.
Okay. That's the only questions I have for Mr. Hopper.
One question, in terms of the exterior of the house, what siding material?
It'll be a mixture of materials as we, showed and promised, if you will, but one thing it won't be is vinyl. So
Okay.
that's the one thing we were excluding. Maybe around the windows, which is very typical, but, nothing like vinyl siding per se or any of that. It'll be quality stuff.
Any other questions for Mr. Hopper? Mr. Cohen?
Can we go back to where it's located on the map? How close is that to the Monroe bypass?
Backs up to Monroe Bypass, basically.
It's very close.
Yeah,
to
it's
Monroe
like right there, next to it.
Okay. Right there, okay. So the neighborhood's right beside the Monroe bypass?
Yes, sir.
D- d- the Monroe bypass is relatively inexpensive to use, thank God. My wife uses it every day. And swore she'd never use it, but she does use it every day. And I would think that would be the most obvious way to get in and out of your neighborhood, would use the Monroe bypass. It made a big difference. I live in Bonne Terre. It made a huge difference to get to 485 to where I live. One of the things, and I figured that since you lowered the density of the project, that the houses would go up to.
Yeah, it
have to
just.
go up in price. That
It's
only.
just kind of, think about it, it's
Yeah,
common
it
sense.
has to. It has to.
Right, yes, sir.
So you said 290 to 380. So your average house is going to be about $345,000.
Yeah, and then, again, please don't hold me to those numbers, but that's what, if you look at a neighborhood we did recently in Stallings, Sterling Manor, to me, similar type location. Probably not as nice a municipality, but, sorry, Linda. But those houses, I think, averaged in the 330, 340 range. But, that was done a couple of years ago. And they're the similar size lots in terms of width and depth. So, yes, sir. But all that kind of always depends on the market, too.
Well, I'm going to put my 2 cents in here, and I voted.
Please do.
I probably voted against more neighborhoods and apartments than anybody in the history of Indian Trail. I've voted against many, many, many of them. But I try to get all my questions answered, and first of all, what I do like is if I lived in that neighborhood, and I don't live far, I'd like to see $345,000, because it's only going to make my house go up in value. My house is going to go up in value because of the houses that they're building.
Yes, sir.
I don't perceive much of a traffic problem, because you're going to use Monroe bypass. They actually want more people to use the bypass. And then I hear this, and I think this is overused by just by people when they use the word floodplain. And I know they've had problems over there in the past with the floodplain, which I don't think has anything to do with your.
We're
with your
staying
neighborhood.
totally out of the floodplain.
But one thing that we all have to remember is, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm talking to the planning department, we can't build houses, on a floodplain or even create a floodplain problem. It wouldn't be allowed, period. So it that keeps coming up, but it won't be allowed. And you know, that's the one thing that we're here for, is protect the public from those type things happening. So generally, and correct me if I'm wrong before I leave, when a neighborhood comes in here, that's one of the things that we can look into it, but we really shouldn't have to go diving that deep into a floodplain, because it's already taken care of. As far as the professional, the people that's looking into what's going on. So, you know, to keep bringing the floodplain up on all projects is just not worthy, only because it's taken care of. It's a problem that's taken care of. So with all that being said, I just kind of wanted to get that out. And, you know, I do want to do the right thing for the people of Indian Trail, but, you know, sometimes you got to say yes to some things. And, you know, it seems to me that the traffic is not going to be, and then I know we had a young lady sitting in the back of the room that was interested in the last time, or mentioned that she was worried about, you know, the berm, and you've got 2 berms, you're going to cover that area. So I want to commend you somewhat for going back and lowering the density of it, making it a smaller neighborhood. And, you know, you know, I come from a neighborhood, was the most popular neighborhood in Union County history as far as people moving into, which was Bonterra. And this was many years ago. I moved in there 14 years ago when that happened. And I don't know what the density is in that neighborhood, but it's got to be 4 or 5 to 1, or very close to it. And it's tremendously popular.
It's actually, it's more dense than ours overall.
And it's a tremendously popular neighborhood. And when you have a neighborhood like that, sometimes, I'm just talking through experience, you tend to have some nice amenities. We have a weight room, we have a swimming pool, we have parks. All that is included in, you know, our neighborhood. So I'm not going to look at this negatively. If we're going to approve neighborhoods, let's approve neighborhoods that work with the town and that try not to create traffic, that do what council had suggested and maybe asked that you guys do, and you did it. And I commend you for it. And I hope that the fact that the price of those houses are going to be $345,000, I hope that can make the people that live in the area, and it may or may not make live in the area, but make it put money in your pocket, because that's what it's going to end up doing, is putting money in your pocket. Because I think with those houses at a higher price range, your house is going to go up in price too. So that I'm done. I'm finished standing on.
No, that's very valid points, and we hope you'll, you know, we feel like we've, you know, done everything we can. We've been over backwards, and I know we're one council member short, but we sure would like to get the number of votes that it takes to get us out here tonight. I mean, we've got property owners that have been very patient with us. So if we delay, that just delays them getting on with their life. So, you know, I hope you'll, you know, just think about it all as you know, do what you know you need to do for your community. Again, thank you so much for letting us be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you for doing what they asked. How do you want to put their motions up there? Okay. Council? Anyone? We need, if there's no more discussion, we need motions for, against.
So, does anybody else want to do this, or I'll be happy to do it.
You can go out with a bang, man.
There you go.
One-step process for step one is is all we're going to do is make a motion to approve. Is Is that all we're doing, or
There's several.
or deny?
There's three of them. We have to do three.
Okay, well, somebody that needs to,
Randy, can we help out, please?
So you've got three separate items to vote on. The first is the comprehensive plan, and you have the case number up there to reflect.
okay, one-step process for decision on CPA 2019-0039R19118. Step one, motion vote. I vote to approve,
Make a motion.
make a motion to approve, excuse me.
Mr.
Make
Cohen's made a
to do
motion to approve. All in favor? Opposed? Let the record stand. All were in favor. Well, Mr. Morse opposing. Motion passes.
The next action item is the annexation.
Do I need to say one-step process and this is, no?
Yes.
Just
Just make a motion. for-
Motion
I'll make a
for
motion to
annex.
approve the annexation,
Of number 154.
number 154.
There you go. Mr. Cohen's made the motion for annexation of number 154. All in favor? The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, and lastly, the two-step process for conditional zoning. Sorry for the confusion.
That's fine. I need a motion for the consistency findings, I believe. Is that, yep?
I make a motion for the required consistency finding as read into record by staff to approve as presented.
Well, that's a second motion. Just made the Mr. Cohen's made the motion.
Oh, wait a minute, I
for the-
skipped one, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You made it.
Fine, is read, okay, as to record read by staff.
Yes.
I make a motion, okay.
Mr. Cohen's made the motion to make the required consistency findings as read into record by staff. All in favor? Opposed?
Somebody want to do the last one, or do you want me to do
No,
it?
wait.
I make a motion to.
All were in favor with Mr. Morse opposing, motion passes.
Okay, step two, motion to approve as presented.
Mr. Cohen's made the motion to approve as presented. All in favor? Opposed? Let the record stand. All were in favor with Mr. Morse opposing. Motion passes.
Mayor?
That's it.
Mayor?
Congratulations.
I need,
Yes.
so the motion for the conditional zoning is is vote for an ordinance. We are required on the first vote to pass that by 4/5 of the council. An absent seat does not count in that calculation, so Mr. Head's seat does count. This passed, so by less than 4/5. This will have to come before council at the next meeting for its final vote to approve.
For each and every item, or just that
Nope,
one?
just the conditional zoning.
Just the conditional zoning.
That is the last item, right?
Correct.
And
CZ
at that-
2019-0039.
That
That
final
won't be a
ordinance,
hearing,
correct.
that'll just be a revote.
Exactly right.
Okay,
And
for-
actually, it can appear on the consent agenda.
It can appear on the consent agenda?
Can.
Yes.
Okay, very well.
Okay.
In all actuality, too, that could be a 3-2 vote, and it'd still pass.
Correct.
so-
It just, it can pass 3-2 next time. Yes.
Just one thing before we move on. Mr. Hopper, you came up here and you spoke, right? And we reached out to you and asked you that if you would consider doing certain things, the berms and so forth and so on. And we know you're in business, and I appreciate you being in business and coming to the town, but I also appreciate the fact that you were willing to work with the town to sort of get this project passed that was acceptable to most people, if I can say that. And I like when people are willing to work. We don't get everything that we want, okay? It's not a perfect world, but there's sometimes we can compromise to try and get things moving. So I just wanted to commend you on that, to your approach, all right? Thank you.
Thank you for your concessions and being patient. And exactly what Mr. McIntyre said. December 10th, it'll be the first half of the meeting. Okay, Mr. Patrick, if you put that on the first part of the meeting?
And that
Okay.
could go on the consent agenda, right?
Yes.
So that
that'll
doesn't
be
have
at
to be.
6:30. You could be out of here by 6:40. Well, please stay. That's fine. Best of luck. I'm sure town staff will be here to assist you.
Thank you.
That brings us to You have the agenda on the screen, so I can actually read it.
Committee liaison update.
Community liaison update. Anyone have an update? Committee liaison update. Sorry, I don't have my glasses with me. All in favor?
Nobody's in favor.
Sorry, I had surgery today. Anybody have an update?
Sure.
Mr. Morris?
Well, I provided the update for the CARPO at the last meeting, and I'll provide the update for the MTC. Let me grab the paper here. So out of the MTC meeting was a lot of no reports. The biggest thing that we discussed was the bus situation that they have. They have 280 buses, and, every 12 years, they've got to upgrade their buses, and there was a discussion about whether to use compressed natural gas, hybrid, or diesel. But what I took from that meeting is that at the amount of money that they have, they cannot seem to keep up with refurbishing, replacing these buses. So there seems to be a monetary shortfall. But one thing that did happen that ties into it is the light rail. Charlotte City Council decided to go ahead and green light the $50 million for the study. That will be for a firm to design a 26-mile light rail that goes from Matthews to Belmont. And that's going to require a 1/4-cent sales tax increase. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Anyone else? Okay, that brings us to new business. Captain Chase Coble Scholarship. Patrick, did you want to yield this one?
I'll go ahead and start it.
Okay.
I've heard a few suggestions. One of them is an amount of money every year for 4 years, and the other one is sort of fundraising outside of the organizations because we cannot get involved ourselves in fundraising. So these two ideas are floating around. If you, Jim and I, we looked at an amount every year. We could share that with council, but these are the two input that I received somehow from council. So if there are any suggestions in regard to this scholarship, so what we're putting out there, a scholarship, we're calling it Captain Chase Coble Scholarship. If council decide to carry on this scholarship beyond the 4 years, let's say if we take Summer, his daughter, and council would like to donate certain amount every year for 4 years until she gets out of college, would you like to continue that scholarship under Captain Chase's Coble, or you want to terminate that after the 4 years? So a couple of suggestions, 4-year deal, and that's all what we got. And we could share with council in a yearly amount if you guys choose that option.
Patrick, I have a question on that real quick. When you're talking about the scholarship, is it specifically for his daughter?
That is correct.
Okay, and when you say
With
carry,
with the option to extend it for another students if council decide to do that and keep
for
that.
the attorney,
We're going to have to do some research on that.
whenever creating a scholarship, there's rules behind scholarships for colleges that allow,
Right.
That
We
fit.
would have to, I'll go through some offline. I'll do some research on this and get a better answer for how we could structure this appropriately. I
Okay.
don't know right now off the top of my head.
and so if you were to continue it past that, it would be the Chase Coble Scholarship for a specific amount moving forward that the town gives. If they were to do that, would it be allowed to accept donations to make it grow, or would then it would have to eventually take on its own life as a 501c3 scholarship?
I do not have an answer for you on that. I'll let you know. I do believe, though, that the town could establish a fund that, and then the town is eligible to receive donations for a general scholarship fund that had specific standards and objective standards that people could apply for the scholarship and win it. So I believe that's something the town can do. I'm not quite sure how we actually assign funds to a specific person, but we'll look into see how to set something up to meet the intent of council that falls within all the legal parameters.
Okay, and just for council, real quick, I've worked with scholarships. Like I said, there's many rules behind that, and obviously, it's an independent body that decides the qualifications and when the applicants come in. And if the town were to establish that moving forward, past doing this for his daughter, my suggestion would be an independent volunteer board rather than the council deciding, but you would have to look into the legality of that. But those were just my questions. Council, any other questions for Patrick? Oh, Patrick, wait, go ahead.
We just need a direction from council, whether you want us to move Karen and staff to move forward with that research.
Well, before we do that, you know, I was speaking with Councilman Head, I think Friday, and we were just brainstorming, and one of the things that we kind of jointly came up with was, what if we were to form some committee that could look at the different fundraising type activities you could do for maybe establish like a Chase, Captain Coble, a fundraising event, kind of like what we did for the memorial. Make this a yearly event that can continually fund a scholarship fund. You wouldn't necessarily need the taxpayers' dollars to do this. Yes, the taxpayer dollars could possibly help get it kick-started. But, we were thinking about silly things like the firemen and the policemen having tug-of-wars and just like a 2-day event that is a certain weekend each year, and that kind of funds it. But more importantly, it was, I don't know much about fundraising, and I'm just wondering if we were to put that out there and get a group of citizens to do this, would you guys think that's a good
And
idea? or
on
not?
that, I think that's a great idea, sorry to interject, but going back to the attorney there, all the money that I raise, the scholarship ones have very specific laws on how the fundraising's done and how it's, because that deals with schools but yes, that can be done, but you have to, they don't follow the same rules I do in my fundraising because I've given away scholarships and done with both ends of but I think that's a good idea. But, Mr. Cohen?
I would, Jerry, I don't know about a tug of war, what people gonna come pay to watch tug of war, but maybe that would be. We had a golf tournament, we could do, a golf tournament is a lot of work involved in a golf tournament. You can raise a lot of money, $10,000 we've raised for golf tournaments. But I think what we're here to talk about tonight is not necessarily the what we're gonna do in for fundraising for people, but what are we gonna do for Chase's daughter? And my idea behind this whole thing is Chase was my friend. Chase was our friend. He was our town's friend. He was, as I said once before, he was not one in a million. He was one single, all to him. He was a special person. And I feel like the town has somewhat of I feel indebted to somebody who loved us the way he did. And I just want to do something for his daughter. I want to do something for her. And we could never give back what that man gave us. Never. I'd like to propose, and I don't even know if this is enough, but, we can do I'd be happy to help with a golf tournament. I'd be happy to help, but as Mayor said, I don't know how we can, how we can go about it. And I think bottom line, and here's a good question, is, if we want to give her a 4-year scholarship, then after 4 years, would it really be this council's decision or some other council? It would probably be some other council's decision at that point what to do and not this one. I mean, we could set we could set the standards for it, but whoever is on council at that time can probably change that to whatever, they can end it or start a new one. I think it's a great idea. Some of the thoughts that have gone through my head is continue to give each high school $1,000 a year after chases, and which is not much. But if you go to the high school graduations, they give out scholarships for different things, and I think the town of Indian Trail contributing back to the students of our town will give $1,000 or $2,000 scholarship to each high school would be taxpayers' money well spent. I do, especially if it's to a child or a family that needs the money. And if there's a way to figure out how some families need money and some families don't, or make it a special thing. But I think we're getting ahead of the game by doing that.
What I'm going to take away and what I'm going to leave you all with is that my understanding is that this council wants to put together a program where the town can assist Chase's daughter with college tuition. This is going to be it's going to be fairly complicated to put together because the town can't give money away like that. So we'll figure out a way to make it happen. I'll get research and I'll come up with some plans to make sure that the intent of this council is how we can exercise the intent of this council in a way that doesn't put her at tax risk and doesn't put the town at risk of giving town, public funds to a private individual. So, like I said, it'll take some research, but I'm sure we'll be able to create a way to make that happen, so that to meet the intent of what this council wants to do to recognize Chase and all he gave to the town of Indian Trail over the years.
Well, let me finish what I was going to say then, and you, if you would, tell me if this is possible. I'd like to see the town do a 4-year scholarship, and I don't know if this is something that you work on, and give $5,000 a year to Summer I guess you also have to take into consideration if Summer decides not to go to college for 4 years, what you might do with that. But I would love to see the town give back just a little bit of what he put into this town, and what he's meant to us.
I think a good way to do this might be to look into if any other entity has created a 501c for her support or any kind of foundation the town can contribute to. So let's just do some research on that. But again, we hear what the intent of this board is.
Do we need to have an amount? Do we need a year, an amount?
Not yet. We're too early yet. We just need to figure out how we do it. Because it's not, unfortunately, it's not that simple.
I don't mean, but I don't really know what we were, if we didn't, what we were going to do this, then it's on here. And I kind of feel like I would like to be, just because of my last time, and I want to do something for her, and council, that I would like to be part of it. But if not, then that's okay. I just want the council to give back a lot, just a little bit.
And it's perfectly fine if you want to make a motion that the town make a plan and figure out how it can contribute, and whatever your terms are.
Vote on an amount?
You can, and then, subject to making sure that it's a legally feasible and, viable request,
Well,
but yes.
Okay.
Before you vote, I have a question. Captain James, has the sheriff's department done anything in terms of creating a fund or some, I know Sheriff Caffey was talking about it at some point. We haven't heard anything, but do you know if anything was created, a vehicle for her to receive some sort of assistance as she goes to college?
No, not at this time. We are waiting on, actually, the sheriff asked me this morning and was actually waiting on y'all to see where y'all were going. I know the last, on our side, that we were looking at was some kind of memorial we placed it over at the Blythe Drive office.
But nothing for Summer in,
Summer specifically.
okay. Yeah, that's all.
Might I suggest, you go ahead, make your amount for 4 years, make your motion. I would also like it to see personally that if you could in the meantime instruct the attorney to find the legality of creating a scholarship moving forward for future students, call it the Chase Coble Scholarship, and we have quite a few colleges around here. I work with plenty of nonprofits in the area that work specifically with the colleges, and it can be done from the town. It just has to follow a very specific rule. And moving forward, and I have no problem while sitting in this chair, and even after I'm out of this chair, holding fundraisers specifically for this in conjunction with the sheriff's office and moving forward. And then eventually, if they create a 501c3 out of the sheriff's office and take over the Chase Coble Scholarship where it becomes its own, of course, there'll be a board that's appointed by whoever's in charge. You have to have restrictions and covenants, just like you would for an HOA. But that could be your motion. You want to give $5,000 a year to her? Make your motion for up $5,000 a year to help her with school, and if you want to, and school and needs for school, whether it be housing, computers, anything related to school. Have Karen find out the legalities of what has to be done. It can be done. It just be done the right way, and then bring it back for a final vote. And then with the, also instruct to look for future, how to continue it. It's,
Okay, that'll work, and Captain, Kevin, Patrick's gonna get on and tell you about something about, I think, what the statute that's gonna be, I don't know if you know anything about it or not.
Right, and that's where the sheriff was not willing to cross.
Well, no, but I think, we'll let Patrick just tell you about that. So I think that's something else. Well, I'm gonna make a motion that, somehow we figure this out, but I'd like to see 4 years for, and I will quickly say, I've had 3 kids, God bless them, all 3 of them's graduated college, so I can tell you that $5,000 is a little bit of money. I got one in college right now, so, and she works at college. I'm real proud of her. She has a job, she comes home, she works. I'm proud of her for doing that. But $5,000 would be very helpful, but it by no means is going to pay for their college. But it would help. So I'm going to propose or make a motion that we give, and I think it's a good start, and call it the Captain Coble College Fund, 4 years, $5,000. And then I think it would be an excellent idea for whoever's on council in 4 years from now to continue some sort of scholarship fund for the 2 high schools that we have in Indian Trail. I think it would be a very good and wise thing for their. I don't think taxpayers would mind at all giving money to a scholarship fund for high school. So that's my motions. 4 years, $5,000
Can
for
you
Chase Coble.
specifically for his daughter, the first 4 years?
Yes.
Okay, being the first recipient. Mr. Cohen's made the.
Second,
Okay.
did you get that part?
But I have a motion made by Cone to contribute $5,000 a year to a scholarship fund entitled Chase Coble Scholarship Fund for the benefit of summer,
Summer Coble.
provided
Right.
it's legal.
Right, well, and yeah, just, and then we'll
Dependent
figure out the
upon-
legal mechanism to make that happen.
Right.
I don't know if you put 4 years in there either, Kathy, but you might want to put that in there.
Yeah, and you'll have to find the dates when she actually starts.
4 consecutive years. And the legal part was the last part was
And we'll just figure out the legal mechanism to make that happen.
Okay, I saw your finger. Just a minute, let her finish. You got all that? Okay, Mr. Morris?
Discussion on that motion. Patrick or Jim, is $20,000, that's going to be good? I mean, you know,
For 4 years, I think it will be no problem
piece of cake.
whatsoever.
Okay.
But it's 5,000 a year, it's not 20,000 every year.
And can that be put as a line item in the budget after we make this vote?
It would have to be.
Yeah, definitely.
required?
Yeah.
Okay.
That-
And at that point, if everything was legal, and say the council next July decided that, because 5,000 is really not a lot, but if the council did decide, whoever's on the council, to raise that amount to whatever, is that possible and doable?
That is what Karen is going to
Yeah, and once we figure out the legal structure of this, then you all can put however much money you want, probably. So there probably won't be a limit, so.
Clarity.
Mr. Cohen?
Well, I don't know if I can re-amend it since Mr. Morse has considered that it may be more. Maybe I didn't ask for it not. A little clarity there, so maybe we ought to reboot this and go back and give her 7,500 or whatever.
A minimum of, you can do a minimum of 5,000 pending additional fundraising.
All right, we'll do that. We'll do that.
Is that feasible?
So we have that, Kathy? All
A
right.
minimum of 5,000 contributed by the town pending additional fundraising efforts by whomever. So the motion's on the table, all in favor? That motion passes unanimously. Okay, that brings us to item B, elected official salaries. Who's going to handle this one, Mr. Sadik?
Council, sir.
Okay, council,
I
Mr.
put it on
Cohen?
there, so let me tell
Man,
you.
you going
let me
over
do it.
you going out in glory,
I'll take full
man.
blame for this, okay? We'll go on to this. I mean, we can discuss this or not. How much discussion? Just want everybody to know that I don't get any of this, so don't worry about me. It ain't for me. Anyway, I've got one example on here of what other municipalities make, and I've looked at all over Chapel Hill, Raleigh Chapel, all over North Carolina. And anyway, our council, for the work you do, I feel like you deserve more. And I've always felt that way. I think you work many, many hours doing what you do, and we're not in it. First thing I want to say is we don't do it for the money. It doesn't have anything to do with the money, but I do think it's worth more. The only one example I have that I have right here is Waxhaw. And they make, right now, they make about $7,000 more a year than you do. And they make $14,000 and some odd dollars. So you don't make a lot of money. So again, it's not the money end of it. I'm going to quit stuttering and get on with it. I want to propose a raise for council, and of course, y'all can talk about it. For a few naysayers out there, let me go ahead and tell you, I know how we figure this. Figure this like we did when taxes were raised 7 years ago for parks, and they said taxes went up 27%. The naysayers, well, it did go up 27%, but it went up about, I think, $100 per $200,000 home. So it was, if you added it out per month, it was a couple of dollars per month per house. So it depends on which way you want to look at the tax raise on that. This is not going to create a tax raise, I can tell you that. But because council makes so little, when you give a raise, it's going to make the percentage go up. It's going to make that percentage go high. So when people say, oh, they got a 30% raise, it's because they ain't making much to begin with. So I wanted to get that out. Before I make this, do we want to talk about it? Does anybody else have any comments?
Well, I'm, especially with doing the $5,000 tonight for Chase, I think that this should be tabled until a later discussion. I would rather much see that money earmarked and safely for summer and the scholarship fund going forward than what we do. I mean, I would do this, as I've said it before, I'd do it for any amount. It's to give back to the town, and I'd hate to see us start spending, just going through money like I'm drinking this water. So I would be opposed to doing it this time. Maybe when budget season comes, perhaps discuss it then. Maybe build in a cost of living adjustment to catch up over a period of 4 years if we so chose, whatever that amount would be, 15% raise or something. But I just think it's the wrong time.
I think you would be opposed at budget time as well. From everything that I've heard, it's always been, let's wait for this, let's wait for that. Now is the time you make a decision. Either you're for it or you're not. I mean, simple.
I'm not.
Honestly, right. Let's
Okay,
move on. Next
well,
item.
With that being said, I want to put this on the table, and I know a lot of times it's harder to do things than it is. I'm gonna put down that we get a $75 raise per week, which I think is a 36, somebody figure that out, some odd $100 a year, which is gonna still bring you well below most several municipalities in Union County, which us being the largest in Union County, you'd think we'd be the highest paid, but we're not. It's not even gonna bring us up to anywhere close to the highest paid. And in all fairness to say, I would not ask for this if I thought the town was in dire need of the money. I've checked to see, and as a matter of fact, I think we were encouraged earlier to do this, and we said no to it. And it was something that I wanted to say no to at the time, because I didn't want to be a part of it. I didn't want any part of that pay raise, but I think you deserve it. I think the rest of you deserve it. I think you do a fantastic job. Jerry, I think you do a good job. If you don't want to take it, don't take it. You can put it into the summer scholarship fund, and that's your prerogative. It's all of our prerogative. But anyway, that's my, and did we ever figure out how much that is per year?
$75 a week for 52 weeks, that'll be $3,900.
$3,900. I want that to be on there, which is going to bring us up to a couple $1,000s less than what others. So, when you're asking for a raise and it's still going to bring you up to a couple $1,000s less than other municipalities, or some municipalities, I'm sure it's going to be more than some municipalities, but for the largest municipality, I don't think we're asking for too much. So I have a motion on the table for $75 raise.
Is that $75 across the board, or?
Across the board.
Across the board.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Council members, mayor, is that the same for everyone?
Yes.
Is that the question?
I have a
Mayor's
question.
different or the same?
Across the board.
Thank
Across
you.
the board.
I have a question.
Okay.
Mr. Waldowitz, sir, when the budget was prepared earlier this year, sir, there was an item in there in terms of a merit increase or something for the salaries or the stipend that the town council receives, right? I'll let you you can come to the mic, sir. There was there? Was there an amount included in the budget?
Yeah, well, we did have an amount in the preliminary budget that we ended up taking back out.
So it's out of the budget right now, right? Okay, so second question for you. What would that do? Would you be able to give us any idea what that would do to the finances? I think I saw something from you there about 2 days ago that.
Negligible.
Negligible?
Negligible. Won't feel it. We've, I do a budget amendment. I can think of 4 or 5 places. We've had some unbudgeted revenue come in. But yeah, it would be a negligible impact at this point.
Okay. Mr. Cohen, when would you like that to take effect, sir?
I didn't understand you, Marcus.
When would you like this to take effect?
I would like it to take effect, I was going to say immediately, but I might get part of that, so I don't want to say immediately. Let me ask you, what did you have in the budget for council before? Do you remember?
Don't
I
remember.
think approximately about $2,500, but if I'm not mistaken, I thought we brought it before council, not this past July. It was much earlier than that, and it was rejected, if I remember right, David, but we could check on the date. But I don't think it was this past July. It was probably about a year ago.
Well, it was the last budget.
It's been brought up twice.
Yeah, it was.
Two budgets.
It was at the last budget, but I don't remember what it was. But anyway, okay, thank you.
I can find out, but it was in that ballpark, I'm sure.
Yeah.
because I know Patrick's had me do some studies, and we checked some other towns, and as you said, we're kind of like, we're not the lowest, but we're kind of in the middle. We're the biggest town, Jerry, in Union County. I know you guys work hard. And you work hard to keep an 18.5-cent tax rate, which makes, which I'm proud of. Moody's AA1. We're going to do a financial review next meeting, Patrick and I, and you're going to like the audit. The numbers came back, so another good year. So, I support it.
Okay, Mr. Cohen, just need an effective date for your motion.
We'll make it you want to make it when's a good time? Make it effect January 1st or
We can start anytime.
make it we'll start January 1st, so.
That will be great, David, because Jim will be giving an update on the audit next meeting, which is December the 10th.
Do you think it's too much? I mean,
No, it's negligible.
Okay.
Okay.
We're off to a good start again this year, and I'm going to give you the audited numbers. We had another good year, June of 19.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that's what,
Make-
almost 24,000 a year total.
What now?
That comes up to 20, a little shy of 24,000, 23,400. Looks like.
And that's for everybody? Okay.
Mr. Cohen, did you want to make your specific motion?
Big part?
Want to make your specific motion?
I'll make it, when it starts? Yeah, okay, I'll make a motion that we do a $75 a week, $3,900 a year, starting January the 1st, 2020,
Across the board, right?
across the board.
Mr. Cohen has made a motion for a council and mayor salary increase or stipend increase
Stipend.
of $75 per week, beginning with the effective date of January 1st, 2020. All in favor? Opposed? The record stand. All were in favor with Mr. Morse opposing. Motion passes. That brings us to item C, new land development manual. Mr. Todd, I yield the floor to you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Me and Patrick talked, and what we wanted to do was just bring you sort of an informational piece of what we've done as far as our new land development manual. So we wouldn't inundate you with a bunch of information, bringing in the UDO and land development all in one meeting. So I'm just going to go over the really highlights of what we kind of changed, what's the important things we've changed, and just kind of very brief presentation. Basically, what we're going to do is going to go over introduction, project scope, specification, verbiage, standard details, where we updated and what we added, new specifications we've added, and stuff we've transferred over from the UDO to the new LDS. If I don't know, we adopted the original manual in '07, so it's fairly old. And of course, we wanted to update that because some of the standards are outdated and some are lacking regulatory language that is required. The following are a list of outdated and revised items and some that we removed. Asphalt material has changed over time due to NCDOT. ASTM references have changed, so we've got to get up with the times on that. Temperature parameters, certain things as far as material, when you place it in the field and stuff have changed over time. NCDOT obviously has changed. They change about every 4 years. And then we've got certain references. An example, we still reference the old zoning ordinance, which is not even here. So, project scope, basically we tasked the consultant to obviously update the manual, basically do kind of a full re-update. We're a little bit different than the UDO. UDO, we're basically kind of mixing and kind of adding on. This one's basically a total revamp to basically comply with current standards and all that. Also, we wanted to create new standards, and that was based on a findings report, and that's based on committee meetings we had previously with citizens, developers, stuff like that. Specifications, obviously we wanted to update them, and we obviously wanted to restructure the way the manual was written. We also wanted to match the UDO's manual. We told the consultant that, look, we want them to look consistent. That way, we have a developer, a designer looking at the manual, looking at UDO, and then bringing the LDS beside of it. You know, the font's the same, headers, everything's very consistent. We thought that was a very critical piece of it. Obviously, we're adding more specifications because we are lacking some because it's 07, and I'll show you some that we've transferred over from the UDO. Details, basically, well, I don't know the total count right offhand. It's a good many details, but they're broke down in 6 categories. Erosion control, miscellaneous, which is basically your bike rack, park signage, trash, fencing. Park and rec, we have greenway details now that we're going to comply with our new projects we got coming down. And stormwater, obviously, transportation. And we have some tree planting, which is a mixture of actual specs for tree planting itself and protection of tree planting and street planting, stuff like that. All right, I wanted to highlight a few major changes as far as, you know, cost to the developer that I felt needed to be shared. Again, we've talked about in the past that, you know, we have a lot of 30-foot wide roads in town. We have some 32-foot wide roads in town that are main collector streets. And also we have commercial streets that are same basis. They're 30 to 32-foot wide. Well, we want to kind of shrink that down to discourage on-street parking and discourage us as a town having to sit there and use dollars to combat maintaining these every year. And I don't know if you know or not, but our first couple resurfacing contracts, we basically did a lot of 30-foot wide roads, and it took a chunk of the contract, and we couldn't really spread those out like we wanted to, spread the dollars out like we wanted to. So what we did is we kind of we're trying to do kind of a, not a cost savings, but basically a wash as far as the developer is concerned, because we want to do one thing. We want to reduce the footprint, but we want to actually beef up the road itself. And I'll come to that detail in a minute. So what we're doing basically is we're trying to shrink the square footage of the roadway, but we're also trying to make a better road because our standards right now are not are very minimal. Also, you'll see in the red font, we're comparing the top detail is obviously our old one, the new one's the bottom one. We're reducing the footprint of the right-of-way and the laneage, and you'll see in font the sidewalk has changed. We are actually adding a foot. We want to obviously create a wider sidewalk. Again, just a foot, but it's a little bit more room for our residents. Collector Street, it's kind of the same thing as commercial, but Collector is your subdivisions, you're an entrance street. And good, again, we want to reduce that, and it's the same dimensions. Again, go down to 11 feet, add wider sidewalks. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to require, 3-lane sections when the counts induce it, that you need 3 lanes as far as your entrance road. So I don't want you discouraged about that. This is just basically the main arteries that we want to reduce. Local residential, it's going down too as well. We were originally at 24 feet wide. Again, that is on-street parking that can be allowed, and we want that to be reduced. So we've reduced a foot to 11-foot wide lanes, but we've obviously added sidewalk as we did in the other ones. This kind of just shows you how the detail in the manual looks. I'm sorry for the borders, they didn't really come out, but this is actually a street detail that has an option of on-street parking that you can put into it. The pavement section's the same, consistent throughout, even on-street parking. We don't have a lighter pavement for that. And then the setup, you'll see the revisions statement, the detail numbers. Just wanted to give you an overview of what it looks like. All right, and this is we're changing again the pavement section. We want to make it a little bit beefier. So our old section, which we really don't use, most developers make a beefier section these days, but as you can see, we only had a 2.5 asphalt on top of 8-inch aggregate course, ABC. So what we're going to tell developers is, look, you're going to build an actual road first, which is the 3 to 8 range. It's 3 asphalt, 8 ABC. And then at the end, when we go out and do our inspections, and we make them patch what needs to be patched, or vice versa, then they add an actual extra inch on top of that. And to be, again, make it more pleasing to the eye, and hopefully combat a lot of patching we're seeing with these roads. They're just not lasting out there. When you go out there and put a binder course, intermediate course out there, which is more porous, allows more water. Now we're making them put surface down at the beginning, which will hold the water down from getting into the aggregate, and hopefully will hold up over time. We can't guarantee it, but I think it's going to be a better product in the end. Just a little bit overview of what specifications we've got new that wasn't really in the old manual. Access management, roundabouts, just a brief portion about roundabouts, pedestrian bicycle facilities. Obviously, we're requiring bicycle facilities more often. Driveways have changed. Fire lanes, we didn't really have anything that says really detailed about that in the old manual. Cul-de-sacs, want to briefly mention that we are going to start looking at making cul-de-sacs instead of doing asphalt, making them all concrete. If, obviously that'll depend on underground utilities and stuff like that, but we're having to go, I don't know if you remember or not, but with our patching contracts, we're having to do a lot of cul-de-sacs. And we're having to do a lot of 4 to 2 inch thickness, which is 6 inches of asphalt, and that's about $20,000 a cul-de-sac. And that can add up because we have a lot of cul-de-sacs in the area. So if we start doing concrete, obviously we won't have to go back and maintain them as much. So again, we're going to look at it. I don't know how we're going to implement it. We'll work with the developers and see what we can do. Oh, sorry. And then central mail, basically, post office has changed their priorities. We're doing more stationary, centralized mailing. You don't get an individual mailbox anymore, so we have the specifications for that. What the pad's got to be for the apparatus and so forth and so on. And then stormwater, we've added some more stormwater specifications to the existing ones. And then finally, we looked at the old UDO. I took a look at it, and this is when we were working with the previous planning director, and I found that certain items that as a developer, you have to go back and forth to figure out your stormwater requirements, or I'm not a developer, designer, and so it just makes it easier to put it all in one manual. So really, it's just small sections, but we wanted to add them to LDS, and that's our stormwater detention requirements, which we have some in there, but these are additional requirements. Your downstream impact analysis, and just to briefly bring this point up, because it was talked about with Oak Springs, what our requirements are is you have to detain for the 25-year storm. But you actually have to retain for the 50 and the 100-year storm unless you do a downstream impact analysis. And what that entails is basically you have to do a survey of the floodplain downstream or whatever it is, it could be a creek, and figure out your impacts for the 50 and 100-year storm. And if they can prove that they're not going to impact by just holding the 25-year there and not impacting any downstream, they can stay with the 25-year, but nobody ever does that because a downstream impact analysis is very expensive. They don't want to go through the process because it takes a very long time. And so we've rarely seen it. We've only seen it maybe one time in the last 3 or 5 years I've been here. So again, it is a requirement, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to see 100-year storage for all P&P facilities. All right, and then flood analysis, again, you have to do a flood analysis sometimes. If you want to build in a floodplain, there is a variance you can go through, but again, nobody ever wants to do it. And then we have some pond requirements if you actually want to build a pond in the town. And then, of course, additional development restrictions, which is basically when you have an existing commercial site and you want to build on, well, there's certain impacts that you've got to account for, and stormwater detention kicks in if you get past those. And that's it. Any questions?
Mr. McIntyre?
Thank you, sir, Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
First one, you mentioned that we want to discourage on-street parking.
Mm-hmm.
So, and help me out here. When a new neighborhood comes in, we want to discourage them from offering on-street parking or allowing it. Because the reason I ask that question is, in the neighborhood that I live in, the street that I'm on is a wider street.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it connects to one of the entrances, and certain portions of it ends up being very small. If cars are parked on both sides of the road, it's difficult to navigate. I have a 15-year-old who I'm trying to teach to drive now, so that is always something that we have to kind of navigate through to make sure. The question that I have is, if we're trying to discourage on-street parking, how can we really enforce that? Because people still park on the street. I mean, most times the garage is where people keep stuff, keep their extra stuff, and they park in the driveway. And then, as in my case, you get a teenager starting to drive, then here comes another car. So how are we going to really enforce this, where we try to discourage on-street parking, but people still do it anyway?
Well, again, this is tackling, new development, and so we can work with the developer to try to create. And again, you saw a detail for creating actually an on-street parking, and that's the kind of a big issue when it comes to these 30-foot wide roads. You're right; they park on both sides.
Yeah.
And you can still kind of get in the middle, and so when you reduce it, obviously. Or you create a detail like that, you force it on one side of the street and not both. And then we can regulate that by striping and everything else a little bit better than just building a wide 30-foot wide road and have at it. What do you want to do? So again, you've seen developments come in where they've actually made grooves type, well, lack of a better term, but and Cone mentioned it at the Oaks, the gentleman with the Tri-Point. Is it Tri-Point Homes?
Yeah.
If you saw their sketch plan, they actually, you got 2 lanes, but you actually got designated park on both sides.
Right.
I mean, and that makes it even wider, which is a challenge for us because we'll end up maintaining them, but it's a better option in the end, and we can work with them like that. But again, most roads, we don't want to have that because it's going to put a strain on the town when it comes down, 10 to 15 years down the road.
So then does that mean that we have to really go about enforcing the no parking? Because, I mean, if the entrance is out on the street compared to some, where people are going to park in front of their house, unfortunately, not now, not the existing ones. I'm talking about just for the future developments. People are going to park on the streets, and then the sheriff's department is going to have to go out there and give some tickets because, a house, you buy a house today and then somebody else, you sell it because you have to move for whatever reason, and then somebody new comes in and they have a work truck and they also have a personal car, and that's kind of what, so it'll be interesting to see how we enforce it.
Yeah, I would suggest one other idea, and it's, I don't think it's a popular idea, but it's an idea, is, I think some people don't want to build a sort of a development where you have a pocket parking place, but and I mean it's more common for townhomes and stuff like that and apartments, but for single family it's just not common to see. But I mean you could technically build something like that, and to me I think people that come out of town that obviously wants to park in front of the house, if they have to park there, somebody will go pick them up if it's on the other side of the neighborhood and get them to the house if that's the only place they can park. So to me that's a good idea. I don't think it's a popular idea, but I think it's a good idea to designate common area and build a parking
so we have one of those
on the back side of the subdivision, away from where you view. You don't want to see it on the side of the road by no means, but anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
I have one more question, and then I'll turn it over to the rest of the council. In terms of the updates to the stormwater detention, are they changing a lot from what they were before? Is that
Well, I mean,
similar?
Some of them are based on state standards. I'd say some of them, most of them, but you got to look at stormwater different. It's one's detention requirements, and one's just infrastructure itself. And so infrastructure's changed throughout the years, and some of our stuff's old when it comes to just the infrastructure, the pipe system itself. The BMP, we basically defer to our ordinances based on NCDEQ's stormwater manual. So that's not really changing, but we do have specific requirements in the UDO as far as impervious that are not followed through the state. We're a little bit stricter, so that's part of the manual, and that's why we moved them to the manual, to the UDO.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, anyone else? Patrick?
Yes, if I may add, I think it's an excellent question in regard to prevent on-street parking. We're asking most of the developers right now to provide, they got two-car garage, and we're asking for the driveway to be 24 feet from the back of the sidewalk. That gives you 4 cars right there. We're also, as Todd shown, we're reducing the section from 24 to 22 to put them out of compliance. So if you got two-car garage, 2 driveways, there's no need to park right there on the street. Bonterra Boulevard, I think the main entrance to Bonterra, I've never seen a car on that main strip, correct?
No.
So another item also we're gonna before council on streets, they're too wide, like 30-foot wide street in a residential neighborhood, and put a median in the middle to create something that stop them from parking on the street. And an item that Todd mentioned and Brandy's aware of is these remote parking places, like 6, 7 cars that spread out within the neighborhood. I think if we do all that and Captain Kevin and his staff assist us to enforce the on-street parking ordinance, I think we'll be in good shape. I can't think of anything between Charlotte, here, South Carolina, that developers could do or municipalities could do besides these steps that we're taking.
Any other questions?
In reference to to what we were talking about earlier, when you were talking about pocket parking, pocket parking doesn't have to be across the neighborhood. Pocket parking would be all through the neighborhood, which is even a better idea. But I'm just
Oh, is that
curious,
yours?
from an engineer standpoint,
Oh,
if
stop.
if
Give me
you,
that book.
and where I used to live, the townhomes that I used to be a part of, nobody parked on the street, nobody. But we had pocket parking right beside my yard for the different places. And then down the road, there was another parking. And my question being, if you took away, if they've got enough room to park on both sides of the road, seems like you could really come up with some good pocket and especially under these circumstances, and I know this isn't, if the driveways are in the alleys, there is no sidewalks in the alleys, so I'm assuming there'd be none. So you don't have to worry about parking on top of so you would be able to park up to 4 cars in the back, and then some, it would create a lot of parking, different parking. As far as the parking problem too, and I'm just curious, can the town do this? The biggest problem that we have with parking is, if everybody would park on the same side of the road, you wouldn't have a problem parking. But it amazes all of us when somebody parks here and then, somebody that comes up the other, whichever on the other side of the road, and they park beside each other. And that happens all the time. So is there an ordinance that the town can put in and say, hey, you have to park on one side of the road, one side or the other side, and even maybe put a little white piece of some kind of something, paint it, whatever. I go paint it, and just some paint out there and walk off 15 steps and paint another one or 10 steps. But could we do that? That would seem to me, it's so simple that it seems like it couldn't be done. Is that correct? I mean, that would be the simple.
David, the best way, what you're proposing, it works when a lot of time you have one-way street, which is not bad, because people are still going to stagger park on both sides. But yes, you can. I think Todd showed it in one of the details. If you could go back to that one and to the on-street parking, and see if that's what David is talking about. There was a section that you showed, but that's a wide street.
Yes.
But what makes no sense to me, though, Patrick, is, I see it, but what makes no sense to me is if you're going to allow on-street parking, you still shouldn't allow on-street parking on both sides of the road. And because I don't care how wide your street is, if 2 people park side by side and they park on the street, you still don't have a lot of room in between the 2. So why couldn't we make it, and listen, if you can't park, if you run out of room on one side of the road, you just can't park there. You better go to the next road or go somewhere else. To me, I know, Brandy, you were shaking your head, but I don't know, there might be a good reason you shouldn't do that. And you're shaking your head, there is, but.
It's hard to me to I think we've talked about this with when we tried to set up the policy of trying to designate that, or, I mean, do a weird thing where you do days, you know, you park on one side one day. I mean, it's just weird stuff, you know, we had all kind of ideas.
New York.
Yeah, we had all kind of ideas, and I think, and I'm correct, I mean, Mr. James wasn't with us at the time, but it was just regulating and trying to stay on top of that. I think it can be problematic, because we have a lot of streets to deal with, a lot of subdivisions, and it's just like policing on-street parking now. It's be the same problem, I think.
Well, let me ask you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kevin, you know, I hadn't said this in a few years, but I've always been famous for being the dumbest guy in the room. So sometimes maybe the dumbest guy in the room can have the simplest idea. That seems awful simple to me. What do I not get about parking on one side of the road and not the other?
We met about this today, and Brandy and I and Lieutenant Murray. I think what we're up against right now is getting buy-in from the HOA and the communities to try to get them to police themselves a little bit.
To get it what?
Get them to police themselves a bit, and not us trying to enforce the parking quite as much. Is get them to buy in and listen. You know, we're not talking about just school buses, we're talking about fire trucks. If you got, you know, something on one of these small streets, you know, you're talking about a life and death situation compared to trying to get a kid on a school bus.
Well, as Chase used to tell me, that if people are parked in the road and there's a life or death situation, you're gonna get there. One way or the other, if you have to drive a fire truck and push it out of the way, get down the road, you're gonna get there if two people are drive through a yard or whatever it takes to get there. But to me, and I'll get off this point, why wouldn't one side of the road eliminate the complete problem? Why wouldn't it? I mean, why wouldn't, if you can't park, here's what I'm talking about, and you're getting ready to run into a big problem in Bonterra, because my God, I read next door neighbor all the time, they just can't wait till the sheriff department comes out there and you guys come out of the police department and start writing tickets, because there are people parking in the road, and they've waited for the roads to get turned over, and the roads are turned over now, and that's all I read. Well, they're gonna come out here and give you a ticket, and it's not necessarily true, but would that not just make it super simple if people knew, and if they park on the other side of the road, they're gonna get a ticket? This side of the road's fine, that side of the road is not.
And a lot of it's gonna depend on layout. I understand what you're saying. A lot of it's gonna depend on layout, depending on how you get in and out, the size of the road, or the width of the road.
You're gonna piss off a lot of people that are living on that side of the road that just had to see somebody else's car in front of
On
them.
the other side, well, I understand, I understand.
That's the one thing I got back from our little internal meetings when we were trying to set the policy.
Because
Is,
if
Well,
my,
that's a great
Nope.
point that you say,
my neighbor has four
and I'm
cars,
glad you used
puts
the
all his
word
cars
piss
on my
off, so,
Yeah.
because now I can
can't
say
push
it, but,
I mean, you are, I mean, you're going to, we get
Well,
calls
sure you are.
sometimes,
I'm sure you
this
are, but
guy's
you're gonna
parking
make
in front
somebody
of our.
mad no matter what you do.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I mean, I
Also-
don't care how you go about doing it, somebody's gonna be mad about it.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna get calls regardless of people parking in somebody's yard or anything else and don't know how to on-street park. And, you know, so I don't know if it's just, again,
Well, it's
being
just-
too
I just-
problematic.
Like I said, simple mind, just thinking simple,
I just want to, and it just came to mind simply because my wife delivers the mail. One side of the street's going to get their mail delivered, the other side will not.
well, you
Yeah.
know, they'll learn after a while.
Because if you allow only one side to park on the street, they will not
On bill
deliver.
days, I'm gonna park my car out there anyway, I'll park it out there.
They're not going to deliver where the mailboxes are blocked.
I hear you.
he's only gonna do it on days when he gets bills. So he wouldn't get them.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, really, I don't want to try to solve the problems tonight, but my question is when will this be rolled out that we'll review? And when we anticipate it'll affect the new developments and all of that, the time frame?
We will bring both documents before council for adoption, but there's going to be a training session on the UDO before adoption. Today's item is just for info only, so there'll be back and forth questions and answers on both documents, and we will have ample time for council to be able to do that.
So do you have an anticipated time frame? 6 months, a year?
No,
3 months?
We're not going to do anything on the 10th, so I would say Brandy's looking into early January, and that's it, because we have really nailed down a lot of stuff, and we're working on, with Karen also, another training for council, so December, it's not a good time because of the holidays, so we're going to try to hit all of them, schedule in January, so everybody will have enough time to participate in this session.
Will there be an opportunity for the public to have some input into these as well?
In regard to the town council training, no, we're going to do that two at a time. Karen is okay with that, but in regard to the UDO, definitely, we could have that session open to the public.
Thank you.
One of the things I can ask, or I want to ask is, can we get sort of a summary of items that were in the old UDO that is now being changed, instead of having to read the entirety of both documents and trying to figure?
You hit it right on the money. Brandy and Todd and I, we're going to have a document for you guys to show you what's been changed. That's right. And also, we're going to bring up new items also, so that way you'll be aware of them, like the 1/3 of an acre. That's the minimum size lot, so similar to that. For the training session, you'll have the material. Karen and Brandy will be here. Me and Todd and everybody that we worked on the two documents. Will be open meeting, public will be invited. We will give you the documents before the meeting so that way you get time to review it, and then you'll have ample time during the meeting to exchange information. Anything to add, Karen? No. Brandy? Okay.
Thank you, Todd. One last thing, and I'm going to do like Marcus, and I didn't raise my hand, I'm just going to talk.
The mayor's sitting right next to me. I get permission here, man. That's the power right
That's all right,
there.
I'm just giving Marcus a hard
The
time.
power right there, man.
Just quickly, I think something ought to be put in there too, that when we come up with all, that there's got to be a time period of
Adjustment.
yeah, a time period of, you know, somebody that's already come to the town and presented, and then to say,
Grandfather.
hey, wait a minute,
By law, anybody who has filed an application under the old UDO will be subject to those rules. Anybody who files an application once the new UDO is
Perfect.
adopted, they will be subject to the new rules. There's no in-between on any of that.
perfect. And one last thing I wanted you to explain was, as far as floodplains and that type thing, and you kind of went over that, but we cannot build on a floodplain or, that's already been, and
Yeah, there's a process in our ordinance that you can technically go through a variance process to develop in the floodplain, not the floodway, but the floodplain. But the problem is it's very restrictive, and we've only had 2 instances since I've been here a decade that I've seen, and you tell them what the process is, and then they go away. Because it's too restrictive, and technically, the ordinance says we don't develop in the floodplain. But we have a clause in there that says you can go through the planning board and process and all that, but then they can deny it. And 9 times out of 10, we're going to deny it anyway, so they just give up.
David, the 2 incidences that Todd and I have been involved with for the last 3 years is where they were grading a lot, and they encroach several feet within the 100-foot floodplain, and no houses, no structures, we don't allow them. So we get to say no buildings within, the only thing we allow is sometimes a walkway or a path, but we don't allow any structures within the floodplain.
but I guess the point I want to get across is that when a builder comes to the town and it's been approved by staff, at that point, floodplains, all that's taken care of.
Correct.
It's nothing that really, that the council should be, really can change, concern, because those, it's dealt with and done, correct? Legal problems on that are all.
Yeah, we're actually more restricted than the state. The state is just up to 25 years, but we have that clause of 50 to 100, which I explained. And so, 9 times out of 10, like I said, it's going to get to the 100. and the state
When we
doesn't
had
even
a rain
require
like
that.
We did last year, we had what, a 500-year?
Well, that's the thing is, we calculated it, engineering department calculated a 200-year storm last year.
200-year
Yeah, that was when that hurricane
And
came
it's
through.
gonna, you're gonna get.
Yeah,
You're gonna
the
get,
BM
I
yeah,
drove
the-
around, there was a lot of flooded areas.
Right, and the only one that actually, BMP that actually ran over, the berm actually collapsed, and it was actually a sediment basement. It wasn't even in permanent phase yet, and it was very minor. It was in the woods. It was taken care of. Diener came out and all that, but all the other ones that are actually built, the standard, it was permanent, none of those overspilled that we were told of as a town or witnessed. So, again, they detained the 200-year.
David, there are 39,000 jurisdictions in the United States, from townships all the way to federal. Most of them, they settled by 25. The floodings that we have, Captain Chase and I last year, when we drove around during the hurricane, most of them were under-designed pipes that have been out there on the roads for about 25 to 50 years. And when you get a 500-year storm and you have a pipe that was designed for 10, some of those pipes under the roadways, they're designed for 10, you're going to get flooding. So like Todd said, we do have very stringent stormwater ordinance. And it does cost billions of dollars for jurisdictions to go out there and change what's in the ground. And sometimes if you have a 500-year storm, it's like a hurricane coming to the beach and wiping out all these buildings. There's nothing you could do about that. It's not feasible, economically feasible, to design for the 100 and 200 and 300. You can't do that. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
That brings us to Patrick, manager's report.
That's a quick one, Mr. Mayor. On a new format for the report, we're going to try to, if it's okay with council, we're going to try not to duplicate a lot of items. As an example, right now, Abby, she sends the newsletter once a month. So if we say that in the newsletter and we give an update on the projects, you might not see it in the report. But one thing, one item that it could help us is if council has any meetings with other jurisdictions or other agencies, like Mr. Morse does every time he meets with CRTPO, to let us know, and also main items that can be discussed. If you're going to report on that during the meeting, then we'll exclude it from our report, so that way it won't be any redundancy. Website also, we do have an economic development website, and we do have a website, and Abby and Gary Evans, they put a lot of stuff out there. I think Abby's going to continue updating her and Gary. So also we're going to take these items out of the report that you were used to. I just want to give council kind of an idea that if you can't find it here, it'll be there. If you still want us to include it on the manager's report, we won't have any problem with that. Second item, Abby and I, we got a chance to go to Union County last Friday to the early college, and we were asked to give a presentation like we did last year. We did a presentation for 3 classes, maybe 60, 70 students. 70 students, they were all interested, they were sitting there listening. But I like to share with council something that I noticed, and it really kind of make me think. They're really interested. We gave them all sort of type of engineering, civil engineering, and they were listening, they were looking, they were interested. But when I start asking questions like when we show them how we designed the monument and how we designed the field using softwares, and so I asked, I said, has any of you been in Indian Trail to see what I was showing them? I think probably 1 or 2 out of the 70, they said, yeah, we were at Carolina Court and we saw it, but the rest, 68, didn't see that. Well, that makes me think that there are captive riders that only go from a rural area in Union County to the college and go back. Then we ask about engineering projects in Charlotte. So I showed them a couple of projects in Charlotte. I said, has anybody seen that? And probably 1 out of the 70. So really, those students, it doesn't look like they commute a lot. So what I'd like to do, if council is okay with that, is I'd like to have a field trip for these students. If council like to be involved, it'll be great. I know Mr. Morse showed interest in that. Just to take some of these students on a field trip and take them, bring them over here to show them what's in Indian Trail, and then also take them maybe on a light rail for a half a day so they could see all the buildings and the bridges and the stations. So really that item struck me, and I wish those students were able to be exposed to a lot of stuff that's happening regionally that they're not exposed to. I never thought in my mind that these students not familiar with all these things that been built in Charlotte in the region. So that's item I wanted to share with council. Also, Mr. Morse is gonna turn in the light rail field trip to us. What we're gonna do is we're gonna wait until after the holidays and reach out to council and the commission. If the commission can attend, we're just gonna make it for our council. And we'll have a couple of staff members there, and we will get the van and we'll take care of that. I think that's all the items that I have. One last item. Like I told council, I will be sending 3 classes for council to choose from. If you'd like to attend, we do have the money in the budget for council. This is for educational, informational courses, and definitely Mr. Barber, he needs to take 1 course that's required, and we will make sure it's convenient, closer to Charlotte rather. Sometimes they do them at different areas in North Carolina, so we will send you something and let you choose which one you think that you would like to attend. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Council comments?
Mr. Morris?
Thank everyone for coming out tonight, and hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. And I'm going to defer my time to David for tonight.
Ms. Howe? Ms. Howard?
Can I defer my speech?
Listen, I'm not gonna say much, so y'all go
Oh,
on.
he's gonna have plenty of
Yeah,
time
I'm
at-
saving mine for the next meeting, Jerry. I got one more left, man. Bring a pillow next time, so, I'm just kidding.
Okay, do we have a bulk pickup due pretty soon? A date?
Just
We
happened.
just had it. Think,
We did?
I'm sorry.
a bulk pickup, didn't we just had
Yes,
it?
Adam.
It was-
What date was it?
It just ended last week, so it was the last week and the week before.
Wow, must have been on a different planet here. Well, that's what I was gonna talk about, so I'll just let that go then. They used to put a sign on the end of our street, and there was no sign there, so,
Go ahead.
anyway.
I think Adam is still, Mrs. Howe, gonna make sure that one will pass by your neighborhood, and take care of the bulk. How about that?
Well, I'll sit it out there and then see if
So-
you're gonna pick it up.
The first week, they did not have all the signs out
Mm.
at every entrance. The second week, they did a much better job after some chorusing. But we're there. We're
Okay.
good.
So, do I sneak it down in the dumpster here, or what do I do?
No, just set it out.
I'm glad everybody came tonight, and wish you a happy Thanksgiving. It's really creeped up quickly. I can't believe it's Thanksgiving already. It's a good meeting tonight, and I have to say something about David, because we're gonna miss you, we really are.
Not yet, yeah, I'm coming back next week, so.
But anyway, that's
Thank
all
you.
that's
Thank you,
all.
Shirley.
You're welcome. That's all I have, and I hope everybody has a nice evening and drive safely, please. Thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
So I want to wish everybody a really safe Thanksgiving. Hopefully everybody makes it home, if you're going home safely, and return. Mr. Cohn, we're gonna miss you, sir. up here. I know this is not your last meeting, but I get a chance to say it one more time. We appreciate all your contributions to the town, and I do remember the first time we met, so that's a story I'm going to tell for the next time. Thank you to everybody who came tonight. Do appreciate that. Staff, as always, I appreciate all that you do. I want to ask you guys to recognize the mayor was in the hospital this morning getting a procedure, and he did make it to the meeting, so let's make sure that you heal well. Also,
They found a heart and a brain, so.
right, and then there are other people who are not well right now. You know, Councilman Head's mom just had surgery, so he's attending to that. Hopefully she does make a speedy recovery. And Ken, Shirley's husband, does also make a speedy recovery. So it's these things, keeping these people in your prayers, that they can heal up well and, you know, be out and about again. All right? Thank you, everybody, tonight. Appreciate it.
Mayor Alvarez.
I wrote something down and I can't even read it. Oh. In regards to the Captain Coble Scholarship, Captain, moving it forward, growing it, fundraising, kind of my specialty, growing stuff like that. I'd be honored to be involved with it, moving forward until it becomes an entity of his own and running as a smooth with the town, and it would be an honor to grow that. Patrick,
Yes, sir.
thank you on behalf of the Union County Early College Career Advisory Board. I appreciate you coming out once again and being involved. And yes, we accept your
Field trip.
field trip. Just put a proposal together and send it to Ms. Cooper, and yes, provide me with a lunch when you go.
Okay.
I'd appreciate that. I guess, considering Indian Trail, I'm lucky I have a 6-car driveway. I got lucky on that, didn't I? I let the neighbors park in my driveway.
4 feet.
Ms. Paxson, thanks for your patience and everything while we work through the kinks, and Mr. Hopper for working with the town. It's nice when everybody can iron everything out to make a development more feasible and more happy for as many as possible. That's very professionally done, very impressive. I'm very happy about that. David, yeah, I'm not going to miss you until next meeting, so we'll leave that. And one of these days you have to explain why you carry a football everywhere you go, unless that just sits here at the desk all the time. That's right in front of you. You have that football you've been throwing around the last. And everybody have a great Thanksgiving, and think of me, I will be in the hospital having a hernia fixed, so I will be having a hospital turkey, which is probably Spam. So that will be interesting. Really, remember to give thanks for each other, everything you have, and especially be grateful that election season's over and just getting ready to begin again for next year. Have a safe ride home. God bless. Thanks for coming.
Mr. Mayor, one small item, sir.
Oh, absolutely not. I want to go home.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'll let Mr. Cohen
I'm
speak.
sorry, what, Mr. Cohen hasn't spoken.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. That was good. Okay, no.
I don't have a lot to say tonight. I just wanted to say about the raise. I thought of this after we did it. Is one of the reasons I thought we deserved a raise is because I got one gray hair for every dollar that I asked for in that raise. So over 8 years. So I think it was well worth the raise. You're gonna get some gray hairs doing this, Jerry. You already got some, but
I'm just
you
losing
might
mine.
get some more. And believe it or not, Shirley doesn't have very many gray hairs, and she does not dye her hair. I can tell you that for a fact. She does not. She swears to that. But I have noticed you are getting a few up there now, and it's about doggone time. Is what I'm going to say. Michael, you got a few.
Oh, I've
Marcus, you
just
you
lost
you
hair.
got some. So
Yeah, my hair, man.
But anyway, I thank everybody for coming. I want you to have a great Thanksgiving, and I just want to tell the council again, this job consists of a lot of different things, but one of the biggest ones I think is and you develop over time is courage, and it takes courage to do what we do up here. It really does. It's not an easy job sometimes, and a lot of times it's a lot harder to say yes than it is to say no. It's easy to say no, but you know, sometimes you say yes and you try to do it for all the right reasons. But I hope to see all of you back next week. Not next week, but next council meeting. And I might write a little speech or something before the next one, but it won't be that big. It'll just, you know, hour maybe or so. But no, I just appreciate you all. And I'm going to miss you. So I'll see you next meeting.
Okay, I'm going to turn the floor over to Patrick for one moment.
Yeah, we just have something in preparation to how we're going to beat up on David on December the 10th. So we would like to give it to you right now, but that's part of what we're having planned for December, Adam, if you don't mind. And we couldn't get the real thing, so it's going to come on December the 10th, but this is, if you open that one, just kind of let you know that we do appreciate everything you've done.
Don't break it, man.
For the town. It won't break it.
Just
Holding it for me, Marcus.
Just untie it, man.
I do love Marcus. I told him. Can I do it like, my wife's not here, okay?
We're going to spend 5 minutes opening
All
the
right,
package.
I got it.
There's a tooth. There's a tooth on the floor.
That's okay, they can see it. They can see it on TV.
And the reason why we didn't want to wait, because it takes some time and it also requires some construction at 2 locations. So we wanted David to come and see the mock-up for that.
I think it's nice, Patrick. Thank y'all.
Still got to do that.
Wow. Yeah, I'll try to read it. David Cole, Mayor Pro Tem, years of service, 2012 to 2019. Thank you for your dedication to the town of Indian Trail, our residents, and the development of our parks. Your leadership and support helped shape the facilities we have today. We are grateful for your service to Indian Trail and the improvements made as a result of your time on town council. Thank you. What
we're planning on doing is we're waiting on the 2 plaques, which is similar to the one we have in front of the building. We're going to locate those at 2 parks, one of them at Crooked Creek and one of them at Chestnut Park.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Were you able to get his face sketched into it, too?
No, this is beyond all expectations. Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. So, it's been not only my pleasure but an honor. So, I'm glad to be a part of just a small part of the town and a small part of the parks and a small part of being able to work with all of you. Because you know, I'll save the rest for next week. But thank y'all. Thank you very much.
Can we make it a roast?
Can we make it a what?
Just a
You can
David
make
Cohn
any-
roast night?
Anything you want to make it. Go right ahead.
Well-
My sons are going to be here, and they're a lot bigger than I am. You say anything you want to.
That being said, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
McIntyre's made the motion. All in favor? That would be unanimous.
Thank you, council, for having a part of this, too. Thank you.